Welcome back to Megs & Co. in the studio, a YouTube channel that is all about yarn. Today we are in the yarn dyeing studio, and this is actually a little bonus part 2 episode where we are working on dyeing yarn for our Puff Puff Princess blouse. In part 1, we dyed up 2 pans. They are the pans that are right in front of me. They are still actually going. This is the beautiful red that we are creating for our Puff Puff Princess blouse. And then this is just another pan using the same dye, the same poinsettia dye, but using it at a different depth of shade to just demonstrate how you can get 2 different colors using the same dye. But today, for this little bonus episode, I was sent an entire package of Tundra yarn from Knomad Yarns. This is the yarn that is dyed up in these pans right now. And so each pack of that yarn comes with 10 skeins. And we've got 4 skeins in this pan and 3 skeins in this pan. And that means that there are 3 skeins that we can still play with. That means that we have the opportunity to dye another pan. And I dove into my stash of sample mini skeins, and I picked out 2 more colors that I wanted to dye with the remaining 3 skeins, and we can dye both of those colors in a single pan so that we can do that right here. We're going to dye both colors in a single pan using 1 dye. So if that sounds like fun, let's get to work. So we are going to set up our pan exactly how we have been all along. So if you've been following along with part 1, we are going to add about a tablespoon of citric acid. And I'm going to add my dish detergent. I always struggle with that one. And give this a good stir. Just to dissolve that citric acid. So, what colors did I pick? I'm really excited for this. So in part 1, we dyed poinsettia. It's a dye that you can get from Dharma Trading, and we dyed at a 2% depth of shade. So that is this mini skein right here. And then we also dyed another pan at 0.12% of depth of shade, also with poinsettia. So going through my samples, I was like, you know, what's gonna look good with this to give us more opportunities to use the yarn, use it together in projects together, or just beautiful colors to use them separately. Maybe you want to make 4 different Puff Puff Princess blouses, and now you have 4 different colors that you can choose from. So I thought that these all just played beautifully together, or they are just beautiful all in their own way. They're very springy. I love the way that they play together. So this is salmon. This is a dye by Jacquard, but you can also purchase this from Dharma Trading on their website. So this is 1% salmon from Jacquard, and this is 0.1% salmon. And I just love how the 1% of salmon is such a brilliant kind of coral orange color, and the 0.1% is just a beautiful pastel peach. They're just 2 beautiful distinct colors. They're colors that I use quite a bit in my collection because they're very distinct. Salmon is a pretty strong dye. You can see that, you know, just pumping it up to that 1%, you get a much different color. So using it in small quantities, you can get some really, really beautiful pastel shades that still have quite a bit of intense color to them. So yeah, look at those four together. They're absolutely stunning. If you were to use this as a collection altogether or all separate on their own. So how are we going to then dye this in one pan? I'm going to tell you. So what we're going to do is we are going to dye all three skeins together simultaneously at the same time at the 0.1% depth of shade. Then we are going to remove two of the skeins. I just picked that. I tend to like that light, the very light pale peach color. I tend to just really like it, especially in like color work projects or whatnot. It just always makes such a beautiful contrast color. I really love the way that it looks with this, the red, the poinsettia that we dyed before. So I just feel like I would use that a lot more in my projects. So I've chosen that two of the skeins are going to be the pale peach. So I'm going to remove those two skeins, and then we're going to continue to work with the single skein, and we will then add the rest of the dye to bring that up to the 1% depth of shade. So that's how we can dye all of three skeins in two different colors in one pan. So we just have to keep track of our math and whatnot. So because all three are going to go into the same pan, the first thing that we need to do is mix up our dye. So we need to have enough dye for three skeins at a 0.1%, right? Yes. So 0.1%, let's get the calculator back out. 0.1% depth of shade. So again, when you're working with the depth of shade, if a 1% depth of shade is 1 gram for 100 gram skein of wool, a 0.1 depth of shade is going to be 0.1 grams. I know that is like nothing. 0.1 grams per 100 grams. And so since we're going to have three, we need 0.3. That's it. It's such a teeny tiny amount. So I am going to go into my other room really quick and mix that up off camera. Okay, so here is our mixture. Give that a stir. And I'm just going to add about a third. Doesn't have to be super exact. And give this a nice stir so that it's evenly distributed into the dye pan. And then we will add our yarn. So I went over in detail in part one how I scoured the yarn and pre-treated it so that it was ready for dyeing. So I just have these in a bucket on the floor here. They've been soaking overnight. Come on. This one is not behaving. Okay. And I'm going to make sure to add these all at the same time so that I don't get some that have more dye than somebody else. Okay. and just putting it into the dye gently. Opening up the space between the strands, allowing that dye to get in there. And when we're working with such low concentrations of dye, you will see that the dye will strike rather fast. This is non-superwash yarn, so it's not going to strike quite as fast as a superwash yarn, but like that water is almost completely clear, so we can go ahead and add a little bit more. I find that with the really light colors, sometimes adding less at a time so that you have more, like maybe breaking it up into fifths or sixths, is a great way to get more even results. If it seems like it's taking the dye too fast, like, as in you don't have time to really kind of mix the yarn in, and if you just maybe don't want as much tonality, you want more of a solid color, and you can just add it in smaller increments so that you have a little bit more time to kind of mix the yarn around. So you can see, you know, the backside, you can see some of the tonal effect from, you know, it just taking the dye. I love tonal yarn. I love that effect. I love a fabric that has lots of layers and dimension. So for me, that's the effect I want. But if you want a very solid, a very even color, then you're going to want to add your dye much slower and in much smaller increments so that you're just doing a little bit at a time. You can also delay adding your citric acid. That will also slow things down. I just like to move my yarn sometimes away from the zip ties so that I'm not always holding the same spot up and out of the water. Yeah, like this is exhausting so fast. So you can start with a cooler dye bath to slow it down. You can add your citric acid later to slow it down. There's a lot of factors that you can play with to slow down how quickly it's going to take the dye so that you can reduce your tonality. But again, like I said, I like this effect right here that's happening. I love that. Like that's what I want with my hand dyed yarn. I want to see highs and lows. I want to see just a vibrant, moving fabric that's full of life. So very happy with how this looks. So even though the water is clear, we still need to heat this. The heat is what is going to make this bond between the dye and the yarn permanent. So just because you see that your water is exhausted and your water's clear, if it has not had proper time on the heat, and I would really give it a full 40 minutes on heat, and at temperature heat, you do run the risk that you haven't fully completed that chemical reaction. So we're gonna let this heat, and then once it's heated, we'll remove 2 of those skeins and we'll keep adding more dye to our 3rd and final skein. So, okay friends, are you ready? Okay, let's just dive in. Sometimes it's always so funny, like I step away for, you know, 40 minutes or so to like let things cook inside, and it's like, it's such a break for me, even though for you it's like, you know, it's just a quick transition, and I never like really know how to deal with that because my mind has completely reset, you know, versus, you know, as the viewers, the audience, like nothing has happened, nothing has changed for you. So it's always such like an awkward transition for me, like welcome back, and it's like I'm the only one who has left the situation. Anyway, so it has been it's been about 45 minutes that our beautiful peach yarn has been cooking, so the water is completely clear. I think our peach color is nice and permanently fixed to our yarn. So as per the plan, we're going to keep 2 skeins this peach color. So I'm going to go ahead and get them out of the pan and just put them aside in this bucket. So pretty. Okay. And okay. And so we're going to continue to dye this skein. So far, this skein has 0.1 grams. So we added 0.3 grams of dye to the pan, and so we just have to assume that that the dye was distributed evenly across all 3 skeins. So this skein should have about 0.1 grams, so at about 1/10 of a gram of dye is already on this skein. So if we want to dye a 1% depth of shade, we then have to add back the other 9/10 or 0.9 grams to this. So that's what we're going to do. So I have pre-mixed that up, and just like we've been doing all along, I'm just gonna do a little, that looks good enough. And now that there's only 1 skein in this pan, there is so much room for this yarn to just free flow around that you can get away with you know, adding a lot more at once. Because see, look how the strands really have room to open up and move around. So you're gonna get a much more even coating, a much more even distribution of the dye around the strands of yarn. So just lift it up. I like to remix it. I probably should have pointed it out before I mixed it back up, but you can see sometimes, like, as the dye starts to strike the yarn, when you lift it back up, there'll be certain spots in the water that that have more or less dye. So I like to just mix that back up when I pull the yarn out, so that when I put it back, you know, it's going to be even again. And this is striking pretty quickly, which is good. And like, I don't want to, you know, futz with it too much, but go ahead and add some more. Okay, there we go. I think that's good. And so we'll just let that cook. So probably let that cook for another 40 minutes or so. I'll keep rechecking it about every 10-15 minutes just to turn it over. Also making sure that we're not getting too hot, that we're not getting any bubbles or boils, anything that's going to cause you know, agitation. We don't want to harm the yarn. But that's it. That's it. We have, if you've been following along, paying attention to the entire series, part 1 and part 2, we have just dyed 4 different colors in 3 pans. So 1 package of the Tundra yarn, and we dyed 4 colors in 3 pans using 2 dyes. So, you know, I always like to do this with minimal materials so that it is cost effective, especially if you are learning and just jumping into yarn dyeing. sometimes it can seem a little overwhelming or even price prohibitive with all the materials that you have to start, you know, collecting and whatnot. So I like to show you how you really can maximize on your investment with the dyes and whatnot that you're buying. That in this case, part 1 and part 2 combined, we purchased 2 dyes and we got 4 different colors. So I think that's exciting. Yeah, so please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. It lets me know that there's people out there who want more of this, and you will be alerted when I post additional videos, and especially when I post the sit-down chat where once this is all washed and dried, we will go over the results. How does everything look? And maybe I will have a swatch or an in progress, or even better, a finished Puff Puff Princess blouse. We'll see. Depends on how quickly I can get the part 3 sit down chat filmed. But it would be absolutely amazing if I could have that blouse finished. We'll see. But I will definitely be sharing the yarn with you and how it came out. My lights just flickered. Okay, so okay, so I don't know if the lighting is gonna go out or if my pants are gonna turn off, but so I'll tell you. So I'm filming this on an iPad, so like the camera's not gonna shut off, and same with my GoPro. But we are actually getting a series of severe thunderstorms right now, including some pretty wild wind. Oh my gosh. And I think, and we had kind of a brownout power outage earlier this morning, and so I was all set up. I had soaked the yarn yesterday, and I wasn't gonna film because our power shut down for like a minute, but it came right back on. I waited an hour and I was like, okay, I think we're gonna be okay. But oh my gosh, our lights are flickering again. Okay, please just have power so that this can finish. Oh my gosh. So because I've been kind of filming part 1 right along, we're still cooking the red pan. And just for a little context of like how I'm dyeing. So part 1 literally just ended with me pouring the dye on here, and then I did my outro, and then I went right to here. So this has only been cooking for about 15 minutes, and I really want it to have that good 40 minutes to an hour. So okay, power, please stay on, because otherwise if our power goes out, and it is what it is, I'll just turn the pans back on tomorrow and have to heat things back up just to make sure that everything is fully cooked. But the lights have not blinked again. Okay, so that was like a little fun moment that we just all shared together. So wish me luck that we get through these thunderstorms and we still have power for at least the next hour so that this yarn can cook. So with that, I'm gonna go sign off, and I'll see you next time. Thank you guys for joining me in the studio. I'll see you next time.